The podcast you are about to listen to is one of the many podcasts that is part of the College Huddle, the largest fan-led college sports podcast community on the internet. Fan-made, fan-driven, and fan-fueled. The College Huddle.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free!
Okay, next question.
I'm a horse football coach right now.
You know, I got shoved up, shoved it up. I got shoved it up.
Good evening, Spartans fans. It's episode 51 of the Spartan Savants show. Of course, you are joined by Willie, Nicholas Homburg, a.k.a. Frankenstein Fiddler, Trav, the usual crew, and a special guest this evening. Some of you may know him as Mork from Long Island. Others may know him as Michael Messmer. And we are honored to have you. Mikey, how are you?
I feel great. Thank you, fellas, for having me. I've been obviously a big fan of the show for quite some time, so this is a big night for me.
It's a big night for all of us. It is truly a pleasure. Truly, probably our most loyal listener, if we're being honest.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Nikki and Trav, how are we doing in Dallas, boys?
You know, it's dark and stormy tonight, so it's a little. We'll see how the internet holds up tonight. Let's go that way.
An upgrade from the snow.
Yeah.
That was a little underwhelming for us. But,
It always is.
We didn't get that much. You know?
It never ends up being as much as they say. We got pretty short show. Well, I think it'll be a short show. I never really know, but 2 games to recap: Rutgers and Minnesota. I want to start off by saying with Rutgers, the curse has been lifted. I am now allowed to attend games again without having to worry. It's a big accomplishment.
You literally never missed a game, so you were never even really banned.
Well, now I don't have to worry about it.
Go to like every game, and you would just go anyway.
You know,
I can't say that anymore.
the NCAA tried to ban him. He said no. You know,
That's right.
That's how it works.
That's right.
That's how these things work, right?
Yes, that's right. And then we will talk about the upcoming West Coast trip. Big one coming up, a couple big ones coming up for the boys. And then we will just kind of go into where we're at in the season. I really want to get Mikey's thoughts on this team. I know he was a fan early, and we'll let him discuss that and certainly give him his flowers. But let's start with Rutgers. And I'll kind of let the experts go here, but a solid win, and Mikey can attest this. It felt as much of a road game as any. Definitely a Rutgers crowded MSG. But I thought it was a great performance. Mikey, I'll start with you. Just kind of give us your quick thoughts or your overall thoughts on the game.
Yeah, great to be in attendance to see the win streak, continue. I was shocked, like I was telling you guys backstage, like it was probably 90-10 Rutgers when we walked in there. And I think it felt like Michigan State was treating it as a neutral site game and kind of like buckled a little bit when Rutgers kind of went on that run early before they got their composure. But I thought, we saw what we have seen from this team thus far this year, where they're just a very tough out for 40 minutes and the depth eventually catches up with the other team and they kind of pull away at the end. But I did feel like it was a wine and cheese Rutgers crowd there. I think they banked in a 3 at the end and they were still cheering, but the game was in hand by that point. So great to see the boys in action, anytime you're there. So I thought it was a really solid win for them.
Yeah, it got close at times, but it never really. Mike, you might have said after the game, like I never really felt concerned. Like it just never really felt. It kind of felt like they were at arm's length for most end of the first half to the end of the game early, I thought.
Yeah, totally. It just felt like, once they went on that run early, I'm like, here we go again. Maybe this curse thing, has something to it. But you saw them settle into the game. The Rutgers crowd into it very early, and then MSU kind of silenced them. And it was very much a neutral setting, I think, in the second half and maybe even later in the first half. So I think we saw a lot of good things as and this is a game where it's like all of a sudden it's a Carson Cooper game who nearly had a double in 20 minutes. Jace Richardson had a terrific game as well. So it's been great watching him grow and kind of grow into his role. And I think it's a role that'll continue to grow as the season goes on. But again, I know a lot has been made about the strength of schedule, but anytime you're at a neutral site on the road in the conference, you take the win. No apologies necessary, but like you said, I didn't feel like the game was really, getting dicey at too many points. I thought they kept a decent distance away from them. And when you're playing 10 guys and playing everybody, not much more than 25, 26 minutes a night, you're kind of coming at them for 40 minutes with fresh legs. And, I thought Rutgers obviously has the superstar freshman, but I didn't feel like they had a great supporting cast around them in that game. And especially, Dylan Harper kind of being banged up was a bit of a bummer not seeing him at full strength. But again, you play who's in front of you, you take the win, and we move on.
Absolutely. People making a lot of that schedule as of late, recently, I should say. It's like, can't really do anything about it. And a lot of the teams we've beaten have beaten other teams that are right around where we are in the conference. So I'm with you. And it's something that, can't make too big of a deal about right now, especially. But Nikki, what about your thoughts on the game overall?
Well, one thing too about the schedule, like we're also going to play the good teams. Like it's not like we scheduled no one or something. Like
the next month is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And one thing you got to think too, Minnesota, they're 3-6. They also played us twice, so like that's 2 auto losses. They'd be almost 500 if they didn't play us. Like, imagine if they played lowly Michigan or lowly Illinois. You got to think about that there.
They beat Oregon.
Yeah. But one thing I do like is about this team is, again, kind of like what Mike was saying. We're so deep. Like this game felt more offensive. Like, well, we can talk about the defense more in the Minnesota game, but like here, there's always like a flash of one of the players just giving it to you. Like you get Cohen Carr having his flashy dunks. Like you have Pierre just distributing it perfectly. Like we just have so many guys where when people say there's no superstar talent on the team or like no stars on the team, I feel like that's kind of the point. Like everybody has their moment of being a star. Like everybody looks really good and flashy at times.
Yeah. I agree. It's been, honestly, that's been maybe my favorite part of watching this team is just every night it's someone different. But the consistency is there across all 10 guys that are playing. Trev, your thoughts on the win at Rutgers?
Yeah. The only thing that like I had a negative feeling about was early we were getting beat to a lot of loose balls, a lot of rebounds. So it had me questioning whether we were going to pull it out, but then we started pulling away. And it's just, the way you guys said it was, perfect. It never seemed like the game was out of hand once we took control. And their run of threes at the end made it seem like it was a much closer game than it actually was.
Yeah.
Especially with some of those missed free throws and the struggles against the press, which that's another thing. We're going to have to get better against the press. It's not going to hurt us against Rutgers, but we get playing a legitimate team in the NCAA tournament. What they start pressing us like that, we need to be a lot more poised with that.
Yeah, I agree. That was one takeaway I had. What was that, Nikki?
I think the upcoming schedule will help with that too. Just playing the harder.
We better hope, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A good win there. Moving on to Minnesota. Really took care of business, I would say, in the first half especially. I think Tom Izzo said it was one of the best first halves he's seen in his career. They went into the half with a lead of 36-16. The second half was much closer. The score was 35-37 for the second half. I think it got down to 8 or 9, maybe 10 at the closest. Certainly not the prettiest of second halves, I would say. But I thought a great night from Holloman, obviously. Seeing the 3 go in is really nice. But Mikey, give me your thoughts on the Minnesota win.
Yeah, another solid win. Again, the strength of schedule has come up recently in certain circles, but again, the margin of victory in conference play has been, somewhere in the 10 to 12 point range. So you handicap that down, I think Michigan State's right where it needs to be. The defense really stood out to me in the first half, obviously. And then, I think the Izone has done a great job, and, the advantage we've had at home this year is starting to stick out as well. My concern is a bit high on Jaden Akins. This guy has just all the talent in the world. I think Graham Couch came out with an article, something along the lines of, we're going to need this guy to be, the guy at certain points down the stretch, whether it's closing out, this lead in the Big Ten that we have, or certainly we're going to need him, in March. So I'm fully confident he's going to turn it around, but you want to see him start getting into that groove over the next couple of weeks. And again, I mentioned, in Minnesota game, it's Carson Cooper, just really hurting Minnesota on the boards. Against on this West Coast trip, I'm sure we'll see other names pop up as well. So I thought it was another great win, another solid win. And again, it looks like this team can beat you, in a number of ways. If it's with the half-court defense, is it the rebounding? Is it the fast break? Is it the depth, of just playing 10 guys? So again, going back to the strength of schedule thing, when you're starting to beat these Big Ten opponents, I understand they're not, the top half of the league by any means, but when you're beating these guys by 20 points, similar to Washington, I think that bodes well for, the future, and they're going to have to get up for those games. But the fact that they're taking care of business this season, how many seasons have we watched the past couple of years where we drop a game here at home, drop a game there, just, with, little composure, you name it. So that just hasn't happened.
We'd be 7-3 at best.
Yeah, exactly. So I do, think back to those days, and I'm grateful for this team and how they've performed so far. So to see that early, to see them, build out a lead in the conference, which I'm sure we'll get to, but again, it seems like it's business as usual, for these guys in these types of games.
Yeah. Carson Cooper, 11 rebounds, 9 points. Like you said, really just doing some serious damage on the boards. I want to come back to Akins, so let's put a pin in that. But Trev, give me your thoughts on Minnesota.
Yeah, it was a 22-point win, which is nice, but for some reason I felt like we should have won by a lot more. I don't know if that's just me, but that's always nice to have, but it just felt like there was something missing out of that. But anyway, the one concern I kind of had was it was halfway through the first half and we only had 11 points. And so the defense is playing great, but we're only up 11-3 with 10 minutes left to play in the half. So, it doesn't, another thing that doesn't hurt us this time, but could come back to hurt us eventually. And I don't want to be Mr. Negative this time, but I guess that's where we're going so far. But it's just nice to pick up another conference win, especially at home, sweep a team. And like Mikey said, and like we've said all episode, these guys have the depth, can beat you different ways. And really, honestly, while we feel like we probably should have won by a lot more, we still smoked a team that just beat a top 15 team.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki.
So a couple things. One, if MSU played like Minnesota did in the first half ever, I would break my TV. We made them look horrible. We beat the shit out of these guys. That was so awesome. I'm good. I have no complaints on this game. I know we had not the cleanest second half, but when you just beat the shit out of a team for the first half, you can kind of afford that. And again, we were kind of having some fun. We were beating them different ways. We saw Carr dishing it out to Cooper. We were like the Globetrotters. We were doing whatever we wanted at each time. They looked even in the second half at times too. Minnesota they looked like they were in high school. They were I don't know how many steals we got that game. It felt like every other play, they passed it to us basically, or we just hit the ball out of their hands. We just completely dominated them mentally and physically. It was awesome. And one thing about the Rutgers game I want to say as well that I forgot was 3 minutes in when one of the Rutgers players went up to Jeremy Fears and got in his face like 3 minutes into the game. That you can't do that to this team.
That was great. That was great.
When it comes to the Minnesota game, also it helps that Jackson Kohler was stepping out there and knocking down 3 balls.
Yeah, I was going to say
that was incredible to have.
You don't see that very often.
You see him shoot him. You don't see him make them very many.
Right. Yeah.
The Trey, the 3 in a row from Trey, I was like literally was envisioning Cassius Winston. Like
it reminded me of that
Maryland
look game.
Yeah, especially in wearing number 5.
Spartan
and the headband.
Yeah, I really would have liked to see what some of those threes come from Akins. Circling back on that, and I'll start with Mikey again. What is there an issue you're seeing forcing confidence? Like, is there something that you've noticed that because it's the struggle is obvious, and these last 2 games it seems magnified to me. But I feel like it was a little streaky here and there, but it certainly hasn't been what I would have wanted for him all season long. But it certainly through the past 2 games has been the real struggle for him. Is there anything you're noticing, or?
I don't know if it's one thing. The one thing that stands out to me is just the inefficiency, from the offensive standpoint. I think he's shooting 43% from the floor, less than 30% from deep, where this guy was I think he was a 36% shooter for his career, his first 3 years. So I'm very confident that's going to come back, and we're going to need him to be that go-to scorer. I think that's another critique that's come up recently of, do we have that go-to guy? And at a certain point, like, we just haven't been forced into that scenario where we need to get bailed out by one guy. We've seen Fiddler step into a big role, late in the game and take over. I think that's a great thing about this team is there's so many guys that can wear so many hats. But I think it's just Akins being himself. Like, I think we've been waiting for him to take over as this, all Big Ten player. And even if that doesn't happen, I think he can play within himself and have just a really great run, these next 2 months. But just playing within himself, I think he's great, on the defensive end. No concerns there at all. But I just think if Akins starts hitting, 35% of his threes, starts taking it to the hoop a bit more, he's such an athletic, great finisher. That could be just enough to unlock this offense to, another level come March. So I have all the confidence in the world in his ability, and I think Izzo will bring it out of him, especially in his senior year where he's only going to have X amount of games left. So I know the team and the fan base, he knows that, we're all looking up to him. So it's probably just a rut, but I think, we're going to see a 20-point game here, in no time.
Yeah, certainly. Outside of Cohen Carr, probably our best athlete on the floor when he's out there. I mean, especially, like you said, offensively certainly has had struggles, but defensively, he's still, one of our better defenders and certainly an impact player there. But it's like you said, and I think like Graham Couch mentioned, like eventually we're going to need him to be Jaden Akins. To me, maybe a confidence thing, maybe forcing. Like, I'm glad to see him still shooting threes when he's open, because that's how you get out of these ruts. I always say shoot to get hot, shoot to stay hot. So, like you said, I think hopefully they'll start falling. But Trevor, Nick, anything you're seeing on the Akins side?
I think he's kind of, I think he's pressing a little bit. Like, there are times where, like, obviously he's a great athlete and gifted player, but there are times where you're like, he looks a little hesitant to do something, and then he does it and he doesn't finish it. Like, he'll give a shot fake or something and go to the rim, but then he won't like finish it aggressively, and he'll kind of just toss it up and try to force it over somebody. It's just, I don't know. It's a bit of a forcing and kind of trying to just create things that aren't there sometimes, and not always making the right decision for me.
Anything to add, Nikki?
Honestly, I just kind of think he is what he is. I feel like we have this conversation about him every single year.
Yeah.
And I do think throughout the year, he usually does get better. So, if he's just good enough by March, like if just 2 more of his threes fall, I think he will be fine. Because, the last 2 games, he didn't play great, but he got 10 and 12 points. So like,
Yeah.
that's solid. And the way this team works, it is kind of by committee. And I mean, I feel like some of the best Izzo teams do things by committee. Like I remember the year Nick Ward got hurt. That's kind of when Tillman started to break out, and it was, and by the end of it was him, Goins, and I think Goins and Ward to a more limited extent, just kind of doing that by committee. So we can make it work, I think. But yeah, I just think it's a couple more threes need to fall down and just keep doing what you're doing on defense. And I just don't know if he's going to get that much better.
Yeah, no, it's certainly right. It certainly does feel like we have a version of this conversation since the past 3 years, going on 4 now. Before we go into the West Coast games here, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Peacock broadcast. I mean, the score was wrong for the first 6 minutes of the game. They just had 4-0 Minnesota when it was the opposite. Broadcasting wise, I mean, it's just what sucks. The next 2 games are Peacock broadcast too, so it's hopefully they get that cleaned up. But
almost every game this month is Peacock.
Yeah, 3 of the next 4 at least. Yeah,
the freezing game.
I'm like the biggest Robbie Hummel fan. I think he's just fantastic. I think there's a lot of so play-by-play guys out there.
Mm-hmm.
I joined the stream maybe it's 7:58, and it's just empty air. They just have a camera on in the breast.
Yeah.
There's no pregame. There's no nothing. It's like a high school camera set up in the gym. I'm watching the national anthem. So there's just like the effort there from the broadcast. I would like a little bit more bells and whistles.
Yeah.
A pregame show, a something, even if it's 10 minutes before the game. But
right.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to stick with it, it seems.
I do like when Hummel's on the call. Obviously, being a guy
That's a
from
good
the
one.
Big Ten, he's played is so, especially when he does our games. It's nice, he knows Tom Izzo's offense or the way he runs the team pretty well. He's pretty well in tune with that. But it's just always like an eye roll when I see Peacock. It's like it's just it's not going to be the sharpest of broadcasts.
yeah.
I cannot get over the score bug. Also, broke again near the end. I just didn't know the score for the large portion of the game.
It's literally like the bare minimum.
Yeah,
the camera, show the game, and have the score. That is you have to have those things.
Their halftime crew is not the best either. I don't think there's much chemistry on that.
No, they're not setting.
It's hard to watch. Yeah.
It's too bad that's where the Big Ten is saddled with.
Yeah, Josh Pastner or whatever, the former Memphis coach, didn't even know who the announcers calling the game were.
Yeah, that's the little things you gotta.
It's sad.
Yeah. So MSU is going to travel west here. Starting Saturday, they will play at USC. USC's 12-8 overall, 4-5 in the Big Ten. I think that they're right around 11th in terms of standings. Maybe a little farther down with ties. I don't know for sure. And then from there, they'll travel and play UCLA. UCLA having a little better year, 15-6, 6-4 in the Big Ten, tied for 5th. Not quite up to their standards. Starting with USC, and we'll kind of continue the same trend here. We're starting with Mikey. What I think a lot of the fan base is probably concerned, going on the West Coast for the first time, against these teams, I guess, in conference, not as a whole, but, traveling a little bit better competition. Always tough to play on the West Coast, but, USC should be pretty easy to take care of, but you never know. So give me your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, you never do know. I mean, the thing about Izzo and MSU, I feel like the basketball team year in and year out is well traveled.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're coming off the Maui trip, so not their first time heading west. So I admittedly don't know a ton about USC. I was kind of shocked to see, I think 7 of their 8 losses is at home, which I thought was really peculiar. So I'm not anticipating, an environment that MSU can't handle. And I think MSU is handedly the better team. So I expect them, to handle business on Saturday and hopefully keep the good times rolling. But the traveling, especially if it's one trip for a handful of days, for this program as well traveled as they've been over the years, I think Izzo knows how to get the pieces set up, get the ducks in the row, and get the guys ready to go. And I think, as the calendar turns to February, I know Izzo wants to keep them, on the ball, on schedule, but everyone knows where they're at in the standings. Everyone knows what's on the line with the Big Ten championship and what that's going to end up being from a seeding point in March. So, I expect Izzo to get the guys ready for this one. And I think this is going to be a successful trip. We'll get into, the rest of the schedule a little bit later, but, I'm hoping for a nice clean win on Saturday.
I agree. I'm with you. Trev, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we play USC pretty well overall. I think we've beat them a couple times in the NCAA tournament, so that probably helps. I mean, they also lost their coach to SMU, so who knows what's changed over there really. But you mentioned that they're not so great in the Big Ten, just 12-8 overall, 4-5. But they are kind of dangerous. They played Oregon close. They beat Illinois at Illinois by 10. So, maybe they get one of those games out of there. I mean, we can't let them get one of those games. And then they have 5 guys that score in double figures every game.
Yeah.
So that's a little concern. I feel like we've played teams that have multiple guys that do that, but I feel like we haven't really played too many that have 5 guys that can do that and can beat you that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a great point. And I mean, they're scoring 77 points a game. They put up 99 versus Iowa. So
Need the defense to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki, what about you?
Oh, well, it's we're going against the legendary USC basketball team. I know a lot about them. So I do know Eric Musselman. He's a good coach. He was Arkansas's coach.
That's right.
He had a couple of deep runs. Love the name Musselman. That's what my friends call me. And
It's for years now.
Bronny, I know Bronny James used to be on the team. But yeah, I just think this is a win. Like, they have 5 guys in double figures. Well, guess what? So do we. Like, we're better than them.
I concur. I do think we're better than them.
Yeah, we're definitely better.
Moving over to the following game, UCLA. Probably a more formidable opponent. I mean, they've had obviously some great teams in the past. This team does not seem to be quite as strong as maybe that they have been in years past. Mick Cronin certainly seems to be frustrated with their performance the first year in the Big Ten. But they've got 3 guys averaging double digits as well. Mike, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think this will be a tough one to get. UCLA had this terrible rut a few weeks ago, losing 4 straight, and now they've won 4 straight. So Cronin's a great coach. Obviously, I expect them to be ready to play, and I think they'll need this game, to make a run at an at-large bid come March. So this is going to be a tough one. I think, anytime you're on the road in conference play, this is going to be tough. But, UCLA, one of the better, again, as we get into the meat of the schedule here, probably one of the better Big Ten teams we've faced thus far up until this point. So this is going to be a tough one to get. I imagine it'll be a sketchy line when Vegas comes out with it. But again, going back to my point on USC, like, I think Izzo is going to have them ready for this trip. It's 2 games out there. We come right back. So a tough one, probably going to get a little bit dicey. But, you talk about winning that game, moving to, I think that will be 11-0. Mm-hmm. You kind of start looking ahead of like where, those losses are going to be, at least. I'm not saying they're going unbeaten in Big Ten. That's not going to happen. But they built up, a lead from themselves. And if they can get to, 10-0, 11-0, or even 12-1 through these next 3 games, you're going to be sitting pretty when really the gauntlet starts. So
yeah. So you make a great point. In this UCLA, like you said, this is a game they're going to need to win, whether it's to try and get back into the conversation in terms of the Big Ten regular season rankings, or just to make it as an at-large as bid. So they're going to give us, it's going to be their A game, presumably. Trev, any thoughts on UCLA from yourself?
Yeah. Last week, I believe this was the game that I said is if we lose one of those on the road trip, this is the one that's going to be. And I stand by that. They're the better team than USC out of the two that we're playing. They got wins over Oregon. They played that. We had that close game against Carolina. They had a close game against Carolina. They've beaten Arizona. They've played good teams and they've competed in those games. So that's going to be a challenge for us. I'm not the kind of guy that buys into the strength of schedule argument that people have been making against us, but this is definitely one of the better teams that will have played so far, and it's going to be a challenge, especially out on the West Coast with that late tip. I mean, it's 10 Eastern tip on a Tuesday night. That's a late one.
Yeah.
Welcome to the new Big Ten. Yeah. It's crazy, and that's going to be something they're going to need to be ready for.
Yeah, you don't usually see 10 p.m. Big Ten tips in February. We get that in Maui.
Middle of the week.
Right.
Middle of the week.
Yeah.
I love the sicko games.
Yeah,
the sicko games.
Late at night, screaming at the TV. I mean, let's just talk. Michigan State, USC, or UCLA. Just chef's kiss. That's college basketball right there. Cronin versus Izzo. Just two crazy guys just battling late at night for glory. I just think
two classic programs.
Yeah.
This could be our biggest test of the year so far, to be honest. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
They were preseason ranked really high, if I recall, and I know they have a lot of talent as well. They might be one of the more talented teams that we've played so far, but we just got to keep playing team ball, keep doing what we're doing, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't win this game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Definitely. I think the USC game really sets the tone. I think you want to take care of business in that one, and then look forward, and get ready for UCLA because, like you guys have all said, that's going to be a test. And certainly a talented team that's going to be well coached. Cronin has a very good track record wherever he's been. Before we move and look ahead to the rest of the year and kind of talk about goals and expectations, I want to go back to the beginning because when everyone, including myself, was freaking out about this team, Mikey was steadfast in his confidence. And I want to certainly give him his flowers for that. But what was it that you saw in this team that, obviously not preseason ranked, and now they've rattled off 12 games in a row, 18-2, and first in the Big Ten by 2 games. What did we miss, or what did I miss?
Yeah, it was the first half of the North Carolina game where they came out and blitzed them, and the ball started moving, people started cutting, and we saw this again, no go-to guy, but you had to guard 5 guys for 40 minutes up and down the floor. And they came out and blitzed UNC. It ended up being an overtime win, but I was with you guys, coming off that Memphis game of, this is the same old Michigan State we've seen the past 5 years where, we're looking at anywhere from the 7 to 10 seed, something like that, 5th to 7th in the conference. When I saw the first half, I think I was texting you guys, are you guys watching this team? Like, it looked like a switch went off, and we've seen that team, up until this point. So again, like I would even say like Rutgers and, the second half of Minnesota, probably not the best stretches of basketball we've seen, but for me, that was an entirely different team than we had seen up until that point. And then that team has stuck around up until now, and now we see it. I think the other part of it is, Jace Richardson. I mean, that's a 5-star player. There's just not many freshmen like that performing it the way he does. I mean, the efficiency, I know he's not playing 30-35 minutes a night, but what he's doing, I think it's over 50% from the floor, over 40% from 3, and then I think he dropped 8 assists, no turnovers against Minnesota. So it's just this amorphous, he can be whatever the team needs him to be depending on the circumstances and what the game calls for. So it just seems like we have a rotation of those kind of guys. So for me, it was the UNC game that really the light bulb went off for me, and I thought we might have something here. I did not know, we would lose since then. That's been the case, but so I won't take all the credit there, but just seems like a team that I think has a bit more room for improvement, especially with the 3-point shooting. But now we're also seeing Xavier Booker take it to the butter. And I felt like I was a bit critical of him, like floating around the 3-point line, but it's very tough for these teams to guard, Booker coming down the lane. He's getting fouled or is scoring most of the time. So that's a development. Obviously, we've seen Carr's game, year over year is unrecognizable to what he did, yesterday. And then Fears, just making winning plays all the time. I think, doing things that don't show up in the box score and really becoming that Izzo point guard and, really growing into that leadership role. And obviously I mentioned Jace, but those 4 guys, Jace, Booker, Carr, and Fears, I think have the most room in their game between now and March. And every time, we see these guys are adding a wrinkle to their game, or they're getting some more minutes. They're playing well. So for me, it's very exciting to be, it's just great to have a Michigan State team that's in it at this stage of the game. First place in the conference. We'll see where it goes, but credit to Izzo and the job he did this offseason, because I think from one, the attrition, and number 2, the guys they brought in and the improvement of the guys that were here, that's how we've really gotten to this point.
Yeah, no question. I after that UNC game, I remember thinking, well, I thought back to that Baylor game last year where they went off, and it felt like, oh, this is a totally different team than we've seen all year. And then it's like they just never really built off that or could really find any kind of consistency. But it's been totally different this year. Obviously, like we all know, and you pointed out, that they haven't lost since. It is very nice to have them back. Looking forward, Nikki, I'll start with you here. We talked about this a couple times, but where are your expectations now? I mean, I feel like it's gotten to the point where Big Ten regular season champs is the expectation at the very least. Is that fair to say?
I would say so. I think five losses, you win a share of the title, and we have 11 games left. If we don't win 6 of those 5, then we just weren't that good at the end of the day anyway. So
yeah,
if we're as good as we think we are, I think we might as well declare victory in the Big Ten right now.
Trev, where are you at?
I got news for you, Nikki. We don't share. Okay. Nobody else is coming for that title, right? No, yeah. I think the Big Ten title, it feels weird to say this where I was at the beginning of the season, but it should be an expectation right now. I know that's putting a lot of pressure on them, but they've been playing so well. And like Mikey said, some switch flipped in Maui during those games. I don't know if it was the UNC game or if it was, I mean, obviously we lost the Memphis game, but they looked like a different team than the past couple of years in most of those games. And that was when they really showed that the depth that they have. And, Booker and Carr with the athleticism on the back end has helped a lot. And then also, you talk about doing things that don't show up in the box score. That's where you're seeing a lot of stuff from guys like Zapala and Kohler coming in there too. Kohler in better shape, getting boards and stuff. I mean, obviously that shows in the box score, but and then Zapala just playing hard minutes and playing physical underneath, like what we've been missing so far. So I feel like the pieces are there to where we should remain in contention for the Big Ten championship. Just got to execute on the floor, especially with this tough stretch coming up. I mean, you got what? Sorry, you got to do some counting here. Three ranked teams coming up.
Yeah,
and then a bunch of teams that are just outside of it. So,
yeah,
tough road games. I mean, at Michigan, at Maryland.
Yeah, we talked about the West Coast game. Doesn't get any easier after that.
Yeah, and that Maryland game could easily be a ranked matchup too by the time that rolls around.
They've been playing very, very solid basketball lately. Mikey, what about you? Are you in the same boat in terms of expectations moving forward?
Yeah, I am for the conference title. I just think they've built themselves, quite the lead here, being 2 games up on everybody else.
Yeah.
I think they have this, West Coast stretch and then home against Indiana. If you can go 3-1, and go into this, gauntlet we have coming up at 12-1, if you go 4-3 in that stretch, you have to feel really good about your chances, depending on who you beat and how it shakes out. So for me, it's a conference title. I think that would be a great win for the program and to get back to, where we're accustomed to being from a conference play standpoint. And then for me, I think the floor is, a second weekend appearance, at least in the Sweet 16. And then, anything can happen from there. But again, the depth, how many times last year or in years past, if Tyson Walker wasn't bailing us out, we were kind of
done.
We were SOL. So this team can just beat you in so many ways. And I think that's going to help us when we go into the first round of the tournament against, some teams that are perhaps some upset-minded teams. But I think the depth and the talent, and especially the athleticism and size that this team can put on the floor, depending on the matchup, is going to be overwhelming for a lot of opponents. And that's exactly what we've been seeing in Big Ten play against these, lower half teams of, Michigan State's just taking care of business, and the games haven't been that close. Definitely some battles coming up home and away against, the upper crust of the Big Ten. But for me, it's the conference title, at least the Sweet 16, and then you kind of see what happens from there. But it's exciting to be in the position we're at now.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment from all three of you. If there was one thing in your mind that sticks in the back of your head, like, man, if this happens, or if this guy gets hurt, or if one weakness starts to show that would stop this team from reaching its goals, what would that be, Mikey?
I mean, for me, yeah, the 3-point shooting has been ugly thus far. But as I meant, Akins shooting less than 30%, a career 36% guy. Fiddler shooting 20%. I think he's a 35% guy. Booker and Kohler somewhere around 20-24%. I think their shots are much better. So for me, in the best case scenario, if water starts to find its level from a 3-point shooting standpoint, hopefully over this next stretch, I think that would take this, team to another level. And again, Fears, Carr, Booker, Jace, these guys seem to be getting better. And if they can get through this, tough stretch coming up against some serious competition and come out the other side of that better than they are this month, I mean, this is going to be a monster team. From an injury standpoint, this is probably the best year we've had in recent memory.
Yeah,
I think one that goes to, the depth of the team, and, nobody's getting 30 minutes a night, so the wear and tear just hasn't been there.
Good point.
The schedule has kind of, set itself up. I think we've had some nice, 5, 6, 7-day breaks, so I think everyone's been able to recuperate. The non-conference was not like it has been in years past. We obviously had a tough game against Kansas and Memphis and things like that. But for me, that's crazy. Really can't point to one thing and say, is this one thing holding the team back? Because it really hasn't until this point. But for me, I think the one thing, other than these guys improving over the next month or so, is if they can just become a 32-33% 3-point shooting team, that could unlock the offense and make this, make them a real bear for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the 3-point shooting is, it wouldn't take much more to get to that. I mean, they're 28% right now, so we're talking about a couple more threes per game, which
so fucking bad.
Goes a long way. I mean, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
Trevi, do you have anything different in terms of a possible Achilles heel or something rearing its ugly head that would stop this team?
So I would say that we can all probably agree that 3-point shooting is what can take the team to the next level. I have this maybe illogical fear in my mind that somehow Jace Richardson is going to hit the Max Christie wall and just stop with all his performances and all of a sudden can't make a shot. So that would definitely be something that hurts the depth of this team and possibly become an Achilles heel. I hope it's just completely irrational on my point, but
It's fair. It's fair. Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, obviously 3-point shooting, that's probably going to be what gets us. But, you know, inbounding always makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Always makes me a little nervous. I just think just seeing how we do against more athletic teams, just in general, more better athletes, less lower level teams, see how our defense holds up. Because our defense has been smothering people and just making sure everyone making sure everyone stays healthy, everyone stays fresh, and just keep doing what we're doing.
Yes, I agree. All great points. Yeah, Trev, earlier the performance against the press, it always seems like it. I'm trying to find the right word. Like it almost like it startles us. Like it's like we're not prepared right away. It takes like a timeout or even two sometimes to like clean it up a little bit. But especially it seems like it's magnified late in games when we're up and maybe we let our guard down a little bit, get a little sloppy. But that's definitely something that jumps out to me to be cleaned up. Not to say that this is just a terrible team against the press, but just something to definitely clean up and keep an eye on.
I feel like that's something we have to point out every year too, which is kind of ridiculous at this point. But it's like I forget which game it was, whether it was the Rutgers game or the game against Minnesota yesterday. But even the play-by-play guys were like, "Okay, now get it out of there." Like don't keep the ball there. Stop going to the corner. There's a reason it's open. It's like, your college level basketball players, you should probably know how to break a press by now, if we're being honest.
Yeah, you would think so. I think that's it. I mean, Nikki and Trev, anything for Mikey that you wanted to discuss while we've got him?
Who's been your favorite player of the year?
Oh, good. I meant to ask that. Good question.
Oh man, I mean, I could name all of them. I mean, my favorite player to watch has been Ace. I mean, just the way he plays the game, the efficiency he plays with. I think you guys have talked about him a lot. The one guy I'll single out is Zapala. I mean, I was admittedly critical of the addition, and he's been a bit of a hidden gem that Izzo plucked out of the portal. I mean, we've just been begging for a big with some size, with some hands. Physical, so effective without the basketball, can protect the rim a little bit. Him in that cleanup role, I mean, shooting like 68, 70% from the floor. To go from Sissoko, who, God bless him, is fabulous, but to go from Sissoko to Zapala, and the way they have the bigs playing, I did not give Zapala enough credit when he was coming in, and he's been such a key cog in this team, even though he's not lighting up the scoreboard. From a scoring standpoint or anything, just to have that center play where the past couple of years we were just almost rudderless at that position. And the offense would stop when the center would get the ball. He's been such a bright spot for this team and so very much needed, on this roster.
I totally agree. I at the risk of just beating a dead horse, like it just goes to show, like you don't necessarily, especially when you're the third big man or second big man down into the roster, you don't need them to be this all-star scorer, but the offense, they still need to know how the offense flows, and they need to be able to catch the ball and distribute and be it like you said, not just be like a wall that's just stopping our offense completely from moving forward. So I think that you hit the nail on the head there. That's just been such a pleasant surprise and a treat for this team. And hopefully it all continues. I mean, it's the this is going to be a very difficult stretch. I know we keep harping on it, but I just keep looking at the schedule, and it's like just get through that healthy. A couple losses are going to be all right, and go from there. And like losses you can grow from losses as much as you can from wins, maybe even more so. The last thing I think as great as it would be, you don't want to go into the Big Ten or the NCAA tournament not getting punched in the mouth a couple times, because then you don't know what happens when you do get punched in the mouth. So they've been able to withstand the punches so far, but I think the boxers we're playing in these coming matches are going to be able to throw a bit stronger punches than we've taken to date. So we will see. But all good things so far. I mean, certainly not too much to complain about. Anything else? I feel like
I have one that I keep getting. I want to get Mikey's thoughts on.
Oh yeah,
It might be opening Pandora's box here a little bit, but
Okay.
do we have to worry about Jace Richardson being a one and done?
Yes, we do. The one guy that he reminds me of as just a super duper Nick fan is Deuce McBride, of just like a smaller guard that, you know, you look at him, he doesn't look like he has NBA length or width or weight or whatever it is, but keeps making winning plays. I wonder, I mean, people are going to look at his efficiency and what he's doing, again, in a limited sample size night to night, but he's been doing this all year. Like there just hasn't been a drop off. You made a great point about the freshman wall. I mean, Christie was playing like 31 minutes a night, and that team desperately needed Christie to shoot and keep shooting, whether they were going in or not. This team, again, Jace has been our most consistent, probably best offensive player, and he's coming off the bench. So I wonder if that hides him a little bit, where, you know, next year with Akins graduating, with Fiddler graduating, Jace could, if he comes back, could be the headliner of that team, you know, next to Fears and Trey. So I wonder if he gets that, you know, round 1, round 2-ish grade and comes back to really set himself up for a lottery selection. But I mean, I think people are smart, executives are taking notice, and guys who are this efficient on the offensive end, you know, are going to get looks at, you know, who knows, like, what his evaluation is going to be on defense. I can't answer that, obviously, but I mean, this guy is a 5-star player. This, when they talk about start, this is a 5-star freshman that we're talking about here, and he's just been such a bright spot for this team and has definitely elevated the ceiling for this team. So, do we have to worry? Yes. I think it'll come down to the grade, and again, if he replaces Akins in the lineup next year and is getting, you know, the lion's share of the minutes next to Fierce, next to Trey, that could be enough to sway him. And if he has that, you know, all conference year next year, I don't think he's going to be a 4-year player. I'll say that. One and done might be a bit aggressive, but man, I'm so lucky, or so grateful we have him on our team.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there anybody else on the team we should be concerned about leaving early? Obviously, guys graduating. Cohen Carr comes to mind.
Yeah, Carr for me comes to mind. I think last time I was on here, I said Carr would be one and done. So I'm gonna.
You did.
From
2023.
Yeah. But I mean, the athleticism is just so overwhelming, and we're starting to see that game grow a little bit. They're still not guarding him at the 3-point line, and I wonder when they're going to have to, because I think his confidence is just building more and more, and the way he's taking people off the dribble too, and finishing with efficiency, even when he's not, when he's not putting, when he's not dunking the ball. So his finishing has been really impressive. I think the one thing in Carr, again, we like talk about Aiken shooting or Fiddler efficiency, Booker and what he's developing. I see the Brendan Dawson rebounding in Carr, and I'm like, man, if we had that guy, if Carr, and I think that's not going to be that big of a stretch for him to start doing over the next month, if he becomes just a psychopath on the offensive glass, that is going to be a huge issue for a lot of opponents, and I think that will just take him to another level. So again, that's my point of like Fears growing into his role, making winning plays, Carr on the glass, Booker off the bounce, the shooting as a team. It doesn't have to be the Joey Hauser 3-point shooting. I think that team shot almost 40%. We don't need that, but if water finds its level over the next couple of weeks and then through conference play into the tournament, those, last 5 or 6 ingredients we're talking about could make for a special season for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lots of big games coming up, and there'll be lots to discuss, good or bad, and you'll be able to hit it all from the Spartan Savants, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You guys know the drill at this point. Like, subscribe, download, the whole schmear. Shout shout out to the College Huddle as always. We appreciate them coming to us to be their Michigan State representative. But Mikey from all the Savants, want to thank you for coming on. It's always a treat. Look forward to hopefully doing it again soon, and hopefully talking about some more Big Ten success for Michigan State and even beyond that. But for the rest of the Savants, we will see you guys next week. Go green.
Go white.
Go white.
Prayers for Champagne.